interesting news. Before I went to bed, I checked LinkedIn and Twitter, and they must have been listening to my phone, my communications, because I saw a tweet from Leo Shane, and I saw a LinkedIn post from Mike Irwin. You're out. You're mic dropping.
Well, I wouldn't say that. It's hardly a mic drop. It's a mic handoff, and I'm now just standing at the back of the stage instead of walking off of it. Right?
Gotcha. I'm literally interviewing you the day after you announced that you're stepping down as CEO of Team Rubicon. That's news. I'm assuming that I'm the first media you're talking to since that announcement.
I did a brief interview last night with We Are the Mighty, but yeah, this is the first live one.
I may have to move this episode up.
Yeah, who knows when that one's going to drop.
That announcement was about 24 hours ago. From the recording of this interview. Honestly, how are you feeling about it? I mean, it's been your baby for 11 years now.
Yeah, I feel fantastic. It's been a long 11 years. It's been an amazing 11 years, wild ride. But I always knew I was going to step away at some point, and this was certainly the right time. The organization's as strong as it's ever been. We had an amazing year last year, despite COVID. And we're able to navigate that crumbling financial landscape and emerge on strong financial footing. We did amazing. Our operational outputs were 3 times higher than they'd ever been. And,
oh, wow.
And the reality is I've had my succession plan in place for 5 years. I brought in the person who's going to take over for me is named Art Dela Cruz. He's been our president and COO for the last 5 years. And the intent has always been that he would transition into the CEO role at some point. And
also a former guest on Born the Battle. So if you haven't heard that in the archives, go check that out.
Yeah. Art's an incredible guy with such an amazing background. And he's so humble about talking about it. I told him that's going to have to change when he becomes CEO. People are going to expect to hear a little bit more, but
that interview was about 4 years ago. So hopefully we gave him some good initial training.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, for me, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, man. And I'm, I don't know exactly what's going to be next, but back in December, I was on paternity leave with our second kid. And I just turned to my wife and I said, I think it's time for me to leave Team Rubicon or just, step down as CEO. And she looked at me, like I had something growing on my forehead. And she said, are you crazy? We just had our second kid, and she had medical problems. And it's like, and you're going to walk away from the only steady job you've got, And I said, well, you're going to have to trust me. I think it's the right time. So, so here we are.
So what was the thinking behind that decision overall, as far as you kind of just laid it out there, but I'm like, why? So I'm gonna play the part of your wife. Like, why? Like, what are we doing?
I think in my heart, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm ready to, I think, launch and scale something again. And
is that what drove you into Team Rubicon?
I think it's what I stumbled into Team Rubicon on accident, right? We didn't go to Haiti and start this thing with some desire to build an NGO that would, run a $50 million P&L. We kind of just thought we'd be a couple of dudes down in Haiti doing good work. And it just really kind of came from there. And I think that's actually how most great entrepreneurial stories start, is just you kind of stumble on a problem and you kind of stumble into a solution, which is what we did. But I think it was that entrepreneurial drive that certainly kept me going through the first decade. But I think I'm personally ready for a change. I'm ready to tackle the next hill. And I think that all organizations, and I talk about this frequently as CEO, my team's heard it, organizations, if they're not evolving, they're slowly dying. They're just like any organism on the planet.
100%.
And organizations can evolve in what they do, how they do it, and the people within them. And the people within them evolve 2 ways. They either themselves evolve and grow and adapt to the changes that the organization's experiencing, which I've certainly done over the last 11 years. But then ultimately, those people themselves have to change. You have to refresh who those people are. And it's just time for the organization to experience that. I'm confident in that.
So plateauing, seeing a time for change, and looking
Well,
to
make no
build.
mistake, we're not plateauing. I mean, the
Gotcha. But I mean, as
organization
far as
is
your
growing
personal
like
growth,
crazy.
that's what I meant. Like, but like your own personal growth within the company, you're like, okay, I missed like, is it something like you missed the journey of growing something?
I think it's that. And listen, if I'm being honest as well, it's an emotionally draining role and in organization to lead. You know, the nature of our work is responding to tragic crises globally and domestically, and you know, it's tough. It's a draining line of work.
Yeah.
I started to realize last year that my energy that I could bring to the job every day was starting to fade a little bit. You know, you can only have so much compassion and so much, so much of that emotional
Yeah.
fire. And I started to see mine dim a little last year. And as I was speaking to some of my mentors about that, they said, Jake, listen, it's just COVID. Everybody's going through it. It's because you're working from home and you're not getting energy from the staff. And so I took some time last year wondering if that was it. And it certainly contributed to it. Last year sucked. I mean, it sucked for anybody. It didn't matter, but that was only a part of it. It was also, I think, just a decade of having done it. And so, so when I turned to my wife, I said, you got to trust me. And she fortunately did. And she has for the last 11 years. I'm lucky.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So before my research, I knew of Team Rubicon. I knew of you in the military community, but I did not know that you played D1 football at the University of Wisconsin. That was something I completely did not know about. Two-time Big Ten All-Conference team as a offensive tackle. Were there any desires?
Academic all-conference. Let's put that modifier in there. I was not academic all-conference. I was nerd all-conference Big Ten.
Very good. Big difference. Did not see that because I was like, I obviously glossed over the academic part because I was like, man, were there any desires to see if that was a career option for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, that's why I went to Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin is the premier offensive line program in the country, and I chose Wisconsin over a handful of other Division I scholarship offers where I might have had an opportunity to play a little bit earlier. But I knew that I wanted that challenge of competing against the best and trying to make it to the NFL. At the time I went to Wisconsin, our offensive line coach, every single player that had started at least one full season on the offensive line for him had signed at least one NFL contract. Wow. In like the previous 12 years. I mean, so the track record was just insane.
Yeah.
And I got there and, my first 2 years, as I expected, I was backing up a starting offensive tackle, a senior. And when he went to go, he left, he went to the NFL, he was drafted, and I thought it was my time to shine. And lo and behold, they'd recruited a guy in after me named Joe Thomas, who was the number one offensive tackle prospect in the country. And I thought, okay, well, he's going to wait his 2 years and then he'll get his chance after me. But no, life had other plans. And for those of you that don't know, Joe went on to go play, I think, 11 seasons in the NFL, never missed a snap until his final season, and will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So.
Yeah, first year. Yeah, he's a future Hall of Famer. Absolutely. And very good. Very good. So, I mean, you're obviously not, you don't look like a tackle now. I'm looking at you right now. I'm like, I could see maybe, free safety, something like that. Was it hard to cut weight to get to the Marine Corps?
No, it wasn't at all. The program wanted me to weigh, they wanted me to play at like 315 pounds. Right. Yeah, and I couldn't really get past 290, which is big, right? Like I weigh 235 right now. So I'm still a big guy, but, they wanted me to add another 25 pounds. I just couldn't do it. And so I was really struggling to even stay at the weight that I was at. And bear in mind that like the strength and conditioning program at Wisconsin is intense. And so when I got done playing my last game, I had a 600-pound squat, a 400-pound bench. I had a ton of muscle on me. Ew. And so as soon as I stopped eating like 10,000 calories a day in the pursuit of staying at 290 pounds, like that weight just melted off me. Like I bet you I was down to 245 pounds within 60 days.
Wow. Your bio states that you joined because you were inspired by Pat Tillman, ASU alum myself, know that story very well. How and when did you make that decision to join the Marine Corps?
It was right before my senior season. By this point in time, I knew that my prospects for the NFL were gone. I mean, it was very clear.
Joe was running away with it. Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, there's, I had actually, one of the things that I battled as well was injuries. Both my shoulders had a tendency to blow out of their sockets, and one of them I had repaired. The other one, they wanted to repair it, and I said, don't even bother. And so that spring before my senior year, they actually moved me inside to guard, and I was running as the starting offensive guard that spring. And then, the week before the spring game, I blew out my shoulder again. Right. And so, I had this conversation with my coach, and he's like, Jake, I can't count on you. You're made of glass. And I couldn't disagree with him. And around that same time is when the news that Pat Tillman was killed broke. And so probably, in fact, right after that spring game. And I just made the decision then that I was going to go in and tell my coach that I was, not going to take my 5th year of eligibility, that I was just going to play my 4th year, my senior year, and that I was going to join the Marine Corps afterward. And so I went, I finished that 4th year, even though I wasn't starting, backups are important. I could play all 5 positions on the offensive line. So I knew I was kind of a critical backup for him.
Yeah.
I wanted to fulfill that obligation, and I wanted to finish my degree. And so I played my last game on January 1st, 2005. And, as soon as I dropped, my first 30 pounds, I walked into a Marine recruiter's office and I enlisted.
You've probably had this question before. You have a 4-year degree. Why'd you go enlisted?
There's a couple of reasons for that. I spoke to an officer selection officer early in the process in that January. And he looked at me. So granted, this is 2005, right? The military is not having a problem meeting its quotas.
No.
So this officer selection officer looks at me, and he's impressed that I'm playing football, but I'm still probably 275 pounds. I don't look like a Marine officer who tend to be pretty trim. And he said, "How many pull-ups can you do?" I'm like, "I don't know, 6 or 7." He's like, "Well, you need to be able to do 20." I'm like, "Dude, I'm 275 pounds. By the time you need me to do 20, I'll do 20." He's like, all right. He's like, how fast can you run 3 miles? I'm like, "Dude, I haven't run further than 100 meters in 5 years. So I don't know how fast I can run 3 miles, but tell me what I need to run it in, and I'll get there by."
And I'll get there. Yeah, I'm a Division I athlete. Let's go.
And so then he said, "Have you had any injuries?" I said, I've had surgery on my shoulder, and I had a couple surgeries on my foot. He goes, "Oh man, you're a lot of paperwork, man." It's like, "I got guys lined up outside my office. I'm not quite sure that I can sneak you in." And so he said he'd call me back. He never did. At the same time, though, I was talking to some people who'd come back from the Middle East, and they said, "Listen, if you want to be in the infantry, and if you want to lead Marines in combat, go be a squad leader." Then they said it's a squad war now, and it's the corporals and sergeants that are at the point of friction. And I thought about that for a little bit, and I decided, that's what I want to do, which is kind of a dumb, foolish thing that only like a 23-year-old guy who's got a self-inflated, overinflated sense of self would say. But that's how I ended up enlisted in the Marines.
Very good. Your officer recruiter reminds me of the Air Force recruiter that I first went to. It was the same thing. I had a speeding ticket over $600, and he was like, I'm not even gonna entertain it. And I walked right out dejected, and the Marine recruiter was like, "Yeah, I'll pay that.
I'll make that go away."
And you saw like, that's the brotherhood of the Marine Corps. We take care of our own. I was like, yeah, 18-year-old kid. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. I paid it back and everything, but that's kind of how I joined the Marine Corps. It's very, very good. Very good. So you deployed with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines as a scout sniper, both Afghanistan and Iraq. As a sniper, I'm assuming that you were really able to take in both combat environments. Can you maybe, for those that, of course, those that have never been, can you maybe compare and contrast the two environments?
Yeah. Well, first to clarify, I was in a line platoon in Iraq. So in 2007, I was in a line company, line platoon in Anbar province during the surge, and then went to sniper school after that and deployed as a sniper to Afghanistan. Iraq was extraordinarily volatile when we were there. It was still a 3-way war. We were fighting AQI and the Sunni insurgency for most of the time I was over there.
What year was that?
2007.
Okay.
It was the bloodiest year of the war, and we were in, the Triangle of Death. And it was a combination of IEDs. Like the roadside bombs were everywhere. I mean, it was probably the height of the roadside bomb phenomena. We lost a lot of guys to that, and then it was also, though, they were getting pretty clever with planting them for foot patrols too, because the Marine Corps famously kind of ditched mounted patrols during that time period to avoid IEDs. While the Army was staying mounted in strikers and things like that, and we were going out on foot and just ground pounding it. And they got really good at just laying these booby traps and launching these complex ambushes and things like that. So it was really kinetic. My platoon would do these dwell ops where we would go out into an area called the Zidon outside of Fallujah for 2 weeks at a time. We'd take over local Iraqi houses, fortify them, and patrol out of there for a week or two before packing up and moving on to the next house. You contrast that to Afghanistan. My battalion that my sniper team was a part of was deployed to Afghanistan off rotation, which basically means that when we got back from Iraq, we were owed, I think, 15 months of stateside time. Yeah. But about 7 or 8 or 9 months after we got back from Iraq, they rotated us into Afghanistan for kind of an unscheduled emergency deployment, because the Brits were threatening to withdraw from the Helmand Valley because they were taking so many losses. And so the Pentagon said, hey, we'll throw you a battalion of Marines to shore it up. So we went in there and we had one battalion of Marines spread across an AO that was the size of Vermont. And my sniper team was tasked with supporting a company minus. So basically 2.5 platoons in the city of Sangin, which, Sangin has become a very well-known city in Afghanistan because it was one of the deadliest, areas. And so we had 2.5 platoons and 2 sniper teams owning, and I say that in air quotes, owning Sangin. And a year and a half later, it was taking 2 entire battalions plus to own Sangin. And I wouldn't even say we owned it. We were just renting it while we were there, and we were getting our ass kicked every day. So
as soon as you move on, it gets taken over type of deal.
Yeah. I mean, we were renting that space from the Taliban, make no mistake.
Yeah. While you were in, can you meet either a best friend or your greatest mentor?
Yeah, I mean, I became very close with some of the Marines that I served with. Clay Hunt was my sniper partner in sniper school. We served together in Iraq prior to that, and we spent our time in Sangin together. Clay's fairly well known in the veteran space. There's a congressional bill named after him for suicide prevention because he took his own life in 2011. But I became very close with a number of the guys in my sniper team, and a couple of the other squad leaders from my time in Iraq that I stay in touch with. I've maintained really healthy relationships with my platoon commanders, but they're the dark side, man. You don't get to know them that well when you're in, so it's kind of hard to stay super close to them when you're out. But I see them every once in a while, and truth be told, we more or less kind of looked at each other as colleagues when I was in, because I was their same age. I had a college degree. They kind of knew. On equal footing. I certainly wasn't, and I gave them all the deference that they were owed as my officer. But they'd pull me aside every once in a while in the middle of the night, and we'd have some honest conversations. So
there was some mutual respect there as far as colleagues. Gotcha.
100%. At the same time, when the LT was trying to be super serious, I could look at him and say, listen, sir, I know that 2 years ago you were puking on yourself at a frat house. So I know exactly where you're coming from. All right. You're not Audie Murphy.
Very good. Outstanding. What year did you decide to get out?
Well, I got out in late 2009, but I really made the decision to get out in late 2008 while I was transitioning home from Afghanistan. Yeah. And it was really 2 reasons. I just came to the decision that I didn't want to continue to fight that war. I kind of hoped that Afghanistan would be a little bit more of a righteous war as compared to my first tour in Iraq. And it really didn't. We were fighting these mostly teenagers, and I'm sitting there and we're fighting these teenage Taliban kids. And I'm just thinking to myself, these guys aren't a danger to America. These guys, they just want us to get out of their fucking backyard, and it just was kind of hard for me to really justify the blood that we were spilling, both ours and theirs, on that soil. And that's not to say I became a pacifist. That's not to say that I don't think that there's some limited troop presence in Afghanistan that's worthwhile, but it should be predominantly made up of special operations forces doing limited strikes and, on predetermined targets versus the nation building we were trying to do. That's an aside. The second thing was my body. I already mentioned how the injuries I was battling in football, they just, of course, compounded with 4 years of the infantry and sniper community. And so I wasn't quite sure I could do another enlistment, and my options were pretty limited. Once you're in the sniper community in the Marine Corps and you promote past sergeant, which I was a sergeant at the time, like you rotate out of the sniper community, you can't really stay there. And I think that's changed now, but my only option was to go back to the line companies or
teach.
or go to MARSOC, which was really nascent at the time and hadn't really found its footing yet. And I looked at the MARSOC pipeline and I thought, I don't know that my body can handle it anymore. And so it wasn't worth really trying because I just felt like my body would probably break down in the process.
It's a young man's game.
Yeah, for sure. And when you drive it like you stole it, like I did for the first 28 years, it's you became that old man pretty fast.
Absolutely. So you got out in right around right around 2009 there. Reading some, doing some of my research, that initial, you mentioned Clay, that initial transition sounded rough. I think at the time, and let me know if I'm off base here because I was still in, but the VA, veteran service organizations, universities, nonprofit support, heck, community support, local community support, it seemed like it wasn't ready for the influx of the veterans that came at the time. Is that accurate?
I mean, I think that was accurate probably for the first 3 or 4 years of the wars. But, by the time I was getting out in 2010, I think they were ready. They'd been gearing up for 7 years after Iraq. I just don't think that they were framing the issues right yet. They were still framing the issues entirely around education benefits and access to employment. And listen, both really important things, right?
Absolutely.
But I think that they were missing this fundamental component of a young man or woman's transition out of the military and really out of war, which is purpose and community and really helping them to define what their post-war identity is. And I think people saw that as kind of, abstract and fluffy and kumbaya-ish. And I'm like, and I kept trying to tell people, like, no, this is really fundamental to, a veteran's existence. And if they have those things, they're more likely to go be the best version of themselves and get, go to school and stick with school.
Everything else will come easier.
Yeah, it'll click into place.
Yeah. Once you have that,
you don't join the Marine Corps and dive right into your MOS school, right? You join the Marine Corps and they mold you into a Marine. They spend 13 weeks doing that. You don't even pick up a rifle until you're 6 weeks into boot camp, right? Yeah. And there's a reason for that because they're trying to create for you this shared sense of purpose, this sense of community or this tie to the Marine Corps. And they're trying to, reinstill in you a new identity for who you are. Now, how do you deconstruct that on the backside of the military and not just dump somebody into the civilian equivalent of an MOS school? No, you got to make them civilian again. You got to make them proud of who they are when they look in the mirror and they wake up and they're no longer wearing a military uniform.
How did you find that purpose yourself? How did you get into that?
Well, I mean, the short answer is I went to Haiti 2 months after I got out of the Marine Corps and I found it there. But
it was that quick? I didn't know it was that quick.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got out in the last week of October 2009, and January is when the earthquake hit. I also, though, I think it's worth noting, I think I was a little bit different. It's hard to speculate what my transition would have looked like if not for starting Team Rubicon. But, I was older when I joined. And so I was older when I had these life-changing experiences on the battlefield. I think I also was maybe a little bit more introspective than some of the people I served with. And so I was framing the war and the loss a little bit differently from the beginning, like as some of my peers were. So I just don't know how much I would have struggled, but it's hard to say. I mean,
you almost had a transition before the military too, with football. It's almost like you almost lived that okay, now what sense of
Yeah.
feeling that a lot of veterans feel even before you even joined. Did you use any VA services at the time, or have you ever used any VA benefits, any healthcare, GI Bill, home loan, anything?
Yeah. I mean, I hit for the cycle on what you just said. I got out. VA was my primary healthcare provider for the first couple of years. Certainly as we were starting Team Rubicon and we weren't able to afford benefits packages for people. Even after we started Team Rubicon, we didn't think it was going to be a full-time job. And so I actually was executing on my plan, which was to go back and get my MBA. And so I went to, an MBA program for one semester before I dropped out, but it was, using my GI Bill benefits there. And then bought my first house with a VA loan, which was, honestly, like that is the most amazing benefit, because we bought a house in Los Angeles that we had no right to afford, at a time when it was the perfect time to buy. And, it just unlocked so much financial opportunity for us that we otherwise wouldn't have had.
Outstanding. I always love hearing stuff like that. We actually did a full benefits breakdown on the VA home loan on episode 150. So if you know any veterans that want to, we went to the loan guarantee office and we said, hey, from the time that a person's thinking about buying a home to the time that they're getting the refinance scam mail in their house, and we covered everything in between. So again, if you haven't heard that, check that out. Now my predecessor, Tim, he interviewed Art Dela Cruz again about 4 years ago, and my apologies if you've listened to that episode, and if you haven't, you should. It's a really good one. But I got to go into the history of Team Rubicon a little bit. By the way, Art's from the University of Minnesota, and you're from the University of Wisconsin. That's got to be fun.
Art flunked out of the University of Minnesota and ended up at the Naval Academy. No, he spent a year at UM, which is our fiercest rival at Wisconsin, which is, I think, what you're getting at. But he was trying to play hockey there, and he likes to joke that when you're, 5'10" and Filipino, playing in the hockey center of gravity of America, it's really hard to make it. And so he ended up withdrawing after a year. And he says he flunked out. He definitely did not flunk out, but that's how he likes to tell the story. He ended up at the Naval Academy. That's where he graduated from.
Okay, very good.
You don't know that into the Naval Academy. Let's put it that way.
I was wondering, how do you flunk into the Naval Academy? That's interesting. Very interesting. Got to catch him up. Got to catch up on that with him. Okay. Team Rubicon. Again, like you said, it started 2 months after you got out. I didn't know it was that quick. Started with 8 people. What was the initial impetus? How did the whole thing start?
Yeah, it's a long and complicated story, but I was sitting in Los Angeles. I had just applied to graduate school. I was waiting for my applications to come back, and turned on the TV one day and saw the earthquake in Haiti unfolding. And a lot of people I don't think remember just how bad that situation was. 100,000 people died almost instantly. Like 100,000 people wiped off the planet in seconds, and they estimate another 100,000 plus died in the next call it month. From their injuries and from lack of access to water.
Water. Yeah.
So, I was watching that unfold and I thought, it looked, one, I was bored, right? 2, I had an overinflated sense of my own capabilities. And then 3, I looked at the situation. I thought, hey, it's no more dangerous than, Fallujah or Sangin. And so I called a couple of organizations that were going down there. And I said, hey, I'd love to volunteer. I'm not doing anything until this fall when school starts. And they all said no, which pissed me off at the time. But in retrospect, I completely understand. And I would say no to any idiot that called me today after the Haiti earthquake in my capacity at Team Rubicon. Yeah, I wore that chip on my shoulder for a long time, but now 11 years later, I'm like, yeah, if some idiot called me after a massive earthquake and told me how special he was, I'd tell him to go pound sand too. So, I called a bunch of guys I served with and we organized a team and we got down there a few days later and linked up with some doctors and basically began running mobile medical triage clinics in some of the hardest hit areas of the city. And treating these injured folks. And I mean, the first like 3 or 4 days we were on the ground, the injuries that we were treating were horrific. It was like a Civil War battlefield, crushed wounds, crushed amputations, skull fractures, women in labor, broken pelvic bones, gangrene was already setting in.
I saw an interview that you said Haiti looked familiar.
Mm-hmm.
In what way?
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, the entire, you'd go through city blocks that looked like, a full Marine artillery and aerial barrage had gone through in advance of, 2 companies of Marine infantry. I mean, that's exactly what it looked like. And we'd be driving, we were hiring these local drivers, and we'd be driving through cities, and we'd see bodies in the streets that had been executed by gangs, like hands bound behind their back, bullet holes in the back of their head. Some of them set on fire.
So some were using it as an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there was this whole power vacuum. I mean, Haiti was a terribly governed place to begin with. It was the lowest GDP in the Western Hemisphere. Totally defunct government, and then after, whatever level of government there was before the earthquake was completely non-existent afterward. The police, the military, and so yeah, I mean, criminal networks were taking advantage of that power vacuum. I'm sure it was not a safe place for us to be. I don't want to exaggerate that, but it was, I don't think we were, as humanitarians, necessarily at risk of being targeted by any of those networks. But certainly, I mean, driving through streets and you see a bunch of bound and gagged bodies executed on the side, like, it's a little unnerving.
Well, sure.
You don't have a radio where you can call a close air support strike if you need it. So there was no RF.
Wow. Interesting. How did you grow Team Rubicon from 8 people, 11 years ago in Haiti, to where now it's 140,000 plus volunteers, mostly veterans, 790 plus operations, over 700 communities helped. Started with 8 people. What were some of the biggest factors in growing that?
Grit. Really, I mean, just like grit.
After Haiti, were you like, I think I have something here to grow, or was it?
Yeah, I think we looked at each other and said, this is, there's an opportunity for something special here. We came home with this premise, this hypothesis that military veterans were well suited for disaster response. Pretty simple premise. Absolutely. And we set out to prove it. And, over the first couple of years, I think we were proving it operationally. We wwere struggling to prove it in a sustainable business way. And, it was a lot of grit and tenacity. And I always joke with my team, that when I'm onboarding new hires, I introduce myself and I tell them, like, hey, this is the first real job I've ever had. So, that should terrify you, and we're going to figure it out together. And that's true. I didn't know what I didn't know about starting a company and scaling it. And, again, the other thing was, people often think like, oh, well, you were in the Marine Corps, you must understand logistics. I'm like, if you mean when I reached into the box, there were batteries and ammo there. Yeah, I get logistics. Like,
I don't know how I got there, but
do you think I ever once thought about logistics as a sniper? Like, I would only when I didn't have what I wanted, and I cursed logistics officers, as loudly as I could at the sky. But but what I found is, logistics officers are, some of the best logisticians in the world. And when we realized that we suddenly had to like rationalize our nationwide supply chain and logistics infrastructure, we should go get, former logistics captains or supply clerks or whatever it might be. And they do have that skill set. So we've been able to tap into that. But, what did I rely on? I mean, just grit, just figure it out.
Gotcha. I initially heard of Rubicon when I heard of the Cajun Navy during, when we were getting hit with hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. I heard about them, and then someone told me, there's a veteran leading something similar-ish. Rubicon supports hurricane disaster relief, recovery, rebuilding, but you also respond. Rubicon does also respond to more than that. disaster wise, humanitarian crisis wise, where else has the organization been in the past decade?
Yeah, and we've plugged into a lot of things. We don't just respond to natural disasters like you mentioned, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, fires. We have done refugee crises before, mostly in Syria, not with
Really?
Syria, not in Syria, with the Syrian refugee crisis.
Okay.
We did work in Jordan. We did a substantial amount of work in Greece.
Wow.
As refugees we ran, helped run a refugee camp and clinic in Thessaloniki, Greece, which was really powerful.
Yeah.
We've done civil conflict, right? So we've deployed to places like South Sudan in the midst of conflict there, Burma, on the Thai-Burma border, which of course, Myanmar, Burma is back in the news now, for all the same reasons that we were there a decade ago. And things like infectious disease outbreaks, obviously COVID over the last year, but, prior to COVID, we were doing some infectious disease outbreak work, in some U.S. territories and some places globally. And we anticipate doing more of that. But, COVID was, obviously overwhelming globally, overwhelming nationally. Yeah. We had been tracking it when it was really just kind of thought of as an Asian problem, and thought about, preparing our medical teams to deploy to Southeast Asia to support some of the less robust countries bordering China. But that planning lasted maybe 6 or 7 days before we realized, like, this is not going to be an Asian problem. This is global. It's
coming
here.
Home. It's coming home.
So we very quickly pivoted everything, retask organized the entire organization top to bottom to prepare and respond to COVID. And we did that, and we have been doing that for the last 14 months, which has resulted in some really remarkable operations for us, ranging from, we've sent hundreds and hundreds of medics into Navajo Nation to run medical decompression there, treating thousands and thousands of patients. We helped even not stand up, but support their ambulance corps when their ambulance drivers were decimated. Wow. We established mobile screening clinics for COVID throughout the Western U.S. We surged thousands and thousands of volunteers into food banks to sustain their operations. And then most recently now we're supporting vaccination efforts globally. Yes, globally, because we're now in Papua New Guinea.
It's a different type of disaster, isn't it? And probably something normally it's a disaster when you guys go to it. It's something you see, feel, touch. This one, well, I guess, I say in a physical sense as far as physical disaster, but this is kind of a different thing that we're seeing altogether. What are your teams seeing? And what's the feedback that you're getting from on the ground when it was happening?
Very different type of disaster, yes, but still has almost all of the same elements, right? So, limited resources, right? Whether it's vaccines or masks or hospital gowns and gloves, limited information. We didn't know what we didn't know about this disease when it first broke out, right? And so this whole thing was a learning curve from the beginning, and we continue to have to learn about it. Yeah. And on top of limited information, like massive amounts of misinformation and disinformation. And you see this in disaster zones. You hear about this, village along this coast that's completely cut off and running out of water. And you spend 2 days trying to reach it, and you get there and you realize there's either no village or they're completely fine, right? So, so sometimes that's the natural fog of war. Sometimes that's actually deliberate misinformation. We were in Mozambique for a cyclone a couple of years ago. Mozambique was home to a vicious civil war a few decades ago. And, there was real politics being played between these political factions in the North and the South. And they weaponized that information and that misinformation for humanitarian actors. It's not uncommon, right? In order to direct humanitarian resources to their own populations and keep them away from rival factions. So all of those things, play in, and COVID was no different. The misinformation with COVID has been astounding and really tragic. And it's not like Team Rubicon was immune to it. We've had our own volunteers fall victim to the misinformation, and that's been a battle that we've had to fight. And it's unfortunate we've had to expend energy and resources on it, but it's the name of the game right now.
in my world, that's what we have to combat daily, you know? So you were talking about vaccinations, you know, recently Rubicon and a couple of other veteran led, nonprofits have pivoted a little bit, you know, from their normal missions. And you guys have made this Veterans Coalition. It looks like there's three main missions from the coalition: help current vaccination sites that are out there, establish vaccine sites that aren't, and helping to vaccinate as many Americans as possible. How have you been able to interject this effort with all these veteran nonprofits?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm proud to say that probably later today we will crest 1 million vaccines supported by this effort, which is really amazing for me to just see that milestone come. You know, we began planning for the vaccine rollout last fall. We knew that there were going to be vaccine candidates that were going to get approved, and we knew that there wasn't much in the way of a plan. And part of that has been the fault of, you know, the administration. Part of that is just simply the reality that, you know, the federal government can buy supply and they can distribute it to states, but states then are responsible for, you know, determining eligibility requirements, and that's been a balkanized approach. You know, the federal government can provide guidance, but they can't dictate the results. And then at the end of the day, the counties, there's over 3,000 counties in the U.S. are responsible for the actual execution. And so we just knew that there wasn't going to be a rationalized approach to this.
No.
We also knew that for every person sticking a needle in someone's arm, there's 10 support functions that need to be filled by non-medical providers. And so it was going to be a big manpower shortage. And so you know,
it's just like a grunt on the ground. You need the intel, you need the supply guy, you need all of that to make that happen.
Yeah, the infantry is 15% of the Marine Corps, and everybody else just exists to support the infantry, right? Don't tell anybody not in the infantry that. But,
I think most are aware.
And if they forget, the infantry is there to remind them.
We get it.
Yeah. So we pulled this coalition together. We have a lot of experience in planning and executing operations at Team Rubicon, but we knew we didn't have even enough bodies, even with our 100,000 plus volunteers, to do it alone.
And am I getting that right? The Veterans Coalition for vaccinations.
Yeah.
For vaccination. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So can you name the other nonprofits that are in it for those that don't know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really a who's who of post 9/11 veterans organizations.
Yeah.
So it's the Mission Continues, it's Team Red, White, and Blue, it's IAVA, it's WWP, it's Student Veterans of America. We've added Travis Manion Foundation since we've launched. I know there's a handful of other groups that we're talking to about getting involved. And, you know, it's really going to become important now that, you know, in the next 60 days, we're going to really invert from vaccine shortage to vaccine oversupply, right? We're about to hit this glut of supply, which is great, but having a ton of vaccines doesn't save anybody's lives. You have to get them into people's arms. And so you really have to now just execute.
You know, with over, you know, you always hear the number, there's over 56,000 veteran nonprofits. It's nice to see some team up with something like this. And of course, you and Art have been guests, and I think we've had guests from Team RWB, SVA. I'm not sure about IAVA, Mission Continues or Wounded Warrior Project. What is like the role for each? Like, how are you guys fitting together to make this work?
Yeah, well, so Team Rubicon is really taking the lead on all of the operational planning and execution. You know, this is what we do. We plan operations, we execute them. What we need from them is for their people to show up and fill roles that, you know, we're defining, we're scoping, we're training. But at the end of the day, we just need people to execute. But, you know, beyond that, there are other things that each of these organizations are bringing to the table. For example, IAVA has a huge megaphone and reach from its advocacy work. The Mission Continues has done a great job over the years developing really strong relationships and inroads into vulnerable and marginalized communities. They do a lot of inner city work. And so, you know, we've been able to tap their relationships and some of these relationships like Watts or neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. that we really don't have experience working in. And so, you know, our approach in this vaccine effort has been, you know, really how do we ensure that your zip code does not dictate the ease at which you can get a vaccine?
Sure.
Right. And so that means that, you know, if you're in an urban medical desert and there's no Walgreens because the neighborhood's too run down, and there's no community healthcare centers. Like, listen, those people need vaccines more than anybody, right?
Yeah,
because they have a higher mortality rate with COVID than anybody. So we want to make sure that they have as much access as the people in, the Chicago suburbs, Naperville, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. Outstanding. So you recently turned writer. I've noticed, and we've had many writers on the podcast. Some are, that's their main profession, like Graciela Toscano Sato, John Del Vecchio, J. Michael Hoff, and some others that are like you, Dale Dye, Jeff Struker, Tom Satterley, and others where it's not their primary profession. Is Once a Warrior your first book?
It was actually my second book, but it's the only one that I'm really proud of.
What was the first one?
First one I wrote.
Of it.
The first one was called Take Command. It was a book that I wrote for Crown, which is a big imprint of Penguin Random House, and they approached me about writing the book, and they wanted me to write a leadership book, and I said, no, I don't really want to write a leadership book. I don't think I know anything about leadership yet, and I said, but I really want to write this memoir type book, and they said, no, we don't want that. It's this or nothing. So I'm like, all right, I'll take it. But not particularly proud of the work. Once a Warrior, I'm proud of.
Okay. Was it another, they approached you and you pitched them back and they said, okay, or was it more of a, hey, no, I'm going to do this?
Yeah. 2 years ago, I decided it was time to do it. And, I went out, worked with an amazing literary agent who, I've become good friends with, and she helped me craft the proposal. And then we went and we pitched it to, the big publishing houses and had a couple of competing bids, and, chose the publisher that we went with for a variety of reasons, but it was a pretty awesome process.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, you've had some high praise since it came out. Tom Brokaw said it's the book that America needs right now, and Maria Shriver said Jake Wood offers the most soaring definitions of service I've ever seen. One, how did you get your book into their hands? Two, which is where they commented on it. Two, what made you want to write this book in the first place?
Yeah, I think, so I'll answer the second question first. We were approaching 10 years at Team Rubicon, and I felt like we finally had gotten that organization to a place where, I know it's going to outlive me. And I felt like helping to memorialize the first decade of its existence was something that was worthwhile. Two, my first daughter was born. I've got two now, but my first one was born, and that really forced me to look at the world through a different lens. And I know that's a cliche, but it's true. And I thought about just how, I think people are kind of losing hope in America, whether it's economic hope, whether it's opportunity, whether it's, whatever it is. I think people are losing hope that America is what it can be or should be or what once was. And that saddens me because I fought for this country, but I see what they're seeing. But I've also seen this side of America that's amazing. These men and women that have served alongside me in the military, these men and women that have served alongside in Team Rubicon. And I felt like, America needed a little dose of, hey, here's what we're capable of. And, and I tried to race out to get that published in front of the election, and I missed it by 7 days. But I think that's why Tom Brokaw reacted the way he did to it, because, the final chapter of the book, it talks about this, it ties it back to this idea of hope. And, so often Team Rubicon shows up on people's most hopeless moment.
Yeah.
Right. After a storm has just taken everything that they own, or, maybe even someone that they love. And we help restore it. We send volunteers to communities they've never been to help people they've never met. And that's about as American as it gets. So how do we do more of it?
I think it's easy to get disillusioned with America sometimes, especially in this city, in Washington, D.C. It's easy to get disillusioned, but I can imagine when you go to something like disaster relief operations in America, or heck, a Marine's funeral, you really see what you're missing in that, Jake, what's one thing that you learned during your time in the military that you apply to what you do today?
The world is much more complicated than you think it is when you're 21 or 22 years old. I think the military gave me perspective. I think I thought certain things about the places we were fighting, the people that we were fighting amongst. And I think seeing them up close and personal from the perspective that I had, it certainly didn't make me suddenly believe that there weren't bad people in the world. I've fought them face to face. They've tried to kill me numerous times, came close a half dozen times. So it's not like I don't think that there's bad people in this world, but I think I look at the opportunities that people have or don't have, and I think I have a better understanding of how it shapes who they become, and I think that's that might be exaggerated in a place like the Helmand Valley in Afghanistan, but it's really actually pretty similar to somebody who's born in a Rust Belt town in the United States, or a broken family in a economically disenfranchised urban core. And it's just made me rethink, what people often talk about America in kind of these big platitudes.
Yeah.
And I used to be that guy. I used to be the guy that talked about, America's this, that, or the other thing. Well, my America is all of those wonderful things. Like, I went to an amazing public school. I went to an amazing state school. I had a nuclear family with 2 loving parents. My dad always had a job. I never had to worry walking home from school about my safety. I always had food on the table. Like, I lived the American freaking dream. But playing football with a diverse group of young men from across the country, joining an infantry platoon with a group of diverse men from every corner of the country, fighting in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and seeing, what happens there, I realized that my America isn't necessarily everybody's America, and I can appreciate now the dialogue that people sometimes have about what America can and should be.
Absolutely. Jake, we've covered a lot of ground in relatively short amount of time. Very succinct. I like it. Is there anything that I've missed or haven't asked?
No, I think we got through a bunch.
Maybe a parting shot for anybody that might be listening and is searching for that. They're within that 2-month window like you were when you first got out.
I would just say, take the time to look inward and really figure out who you want to be, as you're getting out of the military. Don't rush it. Don't marry the first girl you kiss, right? Really think long and hard about who you want to become. And then, just like anything you did in the military, build a plan and execute it relentlessly. And you can do it.
We gotta get them one way or the other. Machine gunner, firefight, bullets fly, day and night rain. Simplified, do or die, another campaign. My desk is a rock where the drug lords cut up millions. My pen is a 7.62 round that'll cut them down in an instant. Point, click, pull the trigger to the tune of falling brass. Full benefits and a purple heart and a Russian-made bullet in my back. Raining down lead, punching that clock. Get 'em boys, I'm laying down cover. Machine gunner, firefight, bullets fly, day and night rain. Simplified, do or die, another campaign. Here we go, lock and load, 0331. Lug 1,000 rounds, and I ain't bringing back one.